What if the world's most talked about continent just became its most digitally connected? It's not making the noise you might expect. This isn't about flashy headlines or viral announcements. It's a quiet, deliberate shift in reality constructed block by block, largely away from the global stage. And if you missed a key meeting this year, you might have overlooked the precise instant the entire trajectory quietly changed. For 3 days, national leaders, policymakers, and creators of technology didn't come to repeat the same old promises. They gathered to architect a new functioning reality. The goal? By the end of this decade, the continent aims to operate as one cohesive digital entity, not as a hopeful concept, but as an operational network already in motion. The feeling in the room wasn't defined by its size, but by its tangible focus. Discussions sounded like progress reports, not wishful thinking. Initiatives were framed as active deployments, not distant possibilities. A shift was palpable, not loud but definitive, and it prompts a fundamental question. Is the global community prepared for a continent that's digitally united? Let's examine. For a long time, conversations about digital evolution here were plentiful. The meetings, the white papers, the strategic outlines seemed endless. This time, the atmosphere was fundamentally altered. The latest major summit didn't feel like another forum for ideas. It felt like a technical briefing. Government departments focused less on theory and more on rollout. Tech leaders spoke less about possibility and more about live testing. And the alliance spearheading this pan-continental effort didn't act like a discussion group. It behaved as an organization managing a complex multi-year build. The core thesis, sometimes spoken and sometimes woven between statements, was straightforward. By 2030, Africa to run as one digital marketplace. Not hopes to, not aspires to, but plans to. This intent wasn't broadcast through grand slogans. It was visible in the detailed timelines officials shared, in the way project leads outlined, integration stages, and in how partners referred to the region not as dozens of separate economies, but as one emerging digital ecosystem. So what fueled this newfound sense of clarity and purpose? And why is it happening now? The certainty on display didn't emerge from a vacuum. It wasn't a sudden wave of inspiration. It was the outcome of something that's been absent for too long. Steady, technical, operational alignment. The kind that doesn't trend on social media, but rewires entire systems once it gains critical mass. For years, nations worked on their own digital journeys separately. One nation advanced mobile finance. Another pioneered digital ID. A third explored open data frameworks. A fourth backed its tech founders. These efforts were like powerful streams, full of energy but following separate courses. What the coordinating body has achieved slowly and methodically is guiding streams toward a common sea. When a country now joins, it isn't just agreeing to talk, it's committing to technical harmonization. And in recent gatherings, you could sense how deeply that synchronization is starting to settle. One of the clearest signals was how new collaborations were introduced. No one used promotional hype. People spoke like co-builders on a long-term venture. An agreement with a major youth network, for instance, wasn't pitched as a trendy engagement play. It was described as a talent pipeline preparing a generation for the digital landscape they will soon lead. A partnership with a global financial player wasn't touted as a corporate win. It was a strategic component for an emerging cross-border transaction layer. Another crucial evolution is in how leadership now discusses digital self. A short while ago, the concept sounded idealistic. Today, it sounds operational. Governments recognize that tools built by external entities come with inherent constraints. Identity platforms are hosted overseas. Data resides on foreign servers. Payment networks route through external hubs. These dependencies curb autonomy, and the continent is now treating them as critical gaps that must be closed soon. But perhaps the most significant change is psychological. Leaders no longer speak as if they are racing to match others. They speak as if they are designing a unique pathway, one that doesn't mimic Europe, America, or Asia, but resonates with its own demographic reality, its own needs, its own economic tempo. That focus generates Confidence, not a boastful confidence, but a quiet one. The kind that makes advancement feel unavoidable, not just aspirational. And once nations begin marching in sync, a new question emerges. How will synchronization actually touch the daily lives of millions across the region? When you move past the policy, documents, and partnership memos, the single digital market boils down to something simple, reducing the countless points of friction that make daily life and business harder than it needs to be. For too long, the biggest digital challenge wasn't a shortage of innovation or skill. It was inefficiency. Constant small obstacles. A company thriving in one nation hits a wall in the next. A payment app that works at home becomes inert across a nearby border. Public services that demand long queues and repetitive paperwork. It's draining and universally understood. The pledge of a unified digital space isn't to craft a sci-fi future where tech fixes everything. It's to steadily dissolve that friction, the sort of change you notice in your weekly routine, not just in annual reports. Consider digital identity. Today, traveling between countries often means proving who you are. Repeatedly. Different cards, new registration, unfamiliar processes. A harmonized digital ID means you're securely recognized across boundaries instantly. You don't even notice it. It simply functions. Payments follow. The same logic. The hassle of sending funds across borders or buying from a neighboring country is a near universal experience here. A unified transaction layer erases that hurdle. A phone number becomes a payment method. A wallet works continent-wide. What felt complex starts to feel normal. For entrepreneurs, the effect is magnified. A merchant in one city shouldn't need to reinvent their operations just to serve customers in another capital a short flight away. Once digital barriers lower, the concept of trading within the continent becomes simpler than ever. A neighborhood enterprise can become a regional player without the traditional weight of red tape and cost. And then there's access. Today, a founder might lack crucial resources because the right platform isn't available in their nation. A single market addresses that. If one country engineers a brilliant digital public service, why shouldn't a citizen elsewhere access it? Through connected systems? Why should potential be limited by lines on a map drawn in a different century? The most profound change, however, is in mindset. When systems operate smoothly, people act differently. They envision larger goals. They plan for longer horizons. They move with greater assurance because the environment finally enables their ambition. That mental shift, subtle yet powerful, is what truly reshapes economies. But as life gets simpler within the continent, the world outside it begins to watch more closely. Which leads to our next point. How are international powers responding to a landmass that is knitting itself together digitally and growing more self-reliant? Before we continue, a quick and sincere if you're finding this perspective valuable, please show some love. It genuinely helps the channel. Consider subscribing to Wines of Thought for more deep dives into shifts that reshape our world. Let's proceed. When a major region starts solving its internal complexities, the external world always takes note. Sometimes with strategic interest, sometimes with visible unease. That's the dynamic unfolding now. For years, the region relied extensively on systems built elsewhere: transaction networks, cloud services, security, architectures, identity, solutions, even the basic software running, administrative services. These tools weren't inherently bad. Many were effective. But they came with strings attached, data held abroad, rules set overseas, costs determined internationally, and digital policies influenced by external agendas. As long as countries weren't aligned, these limitations remained in the background. They are background no longer. The moment nations started coordinating on digital ID, linking data sharing protocols, and merging payment structures, the global tech arena felt the tremor. You observe it in how foreign firms now compete more aggressively for partnerships. You hear it in the changed language, terms like co-development and joint innovation appearing frequently. You see it when global forums now feature the continent in core sessions that once overlooked it. None of this is coincidence. The world understands what a digitally unified Africa signifies: the planet's largest youth population stepping into a shared digital arena. an economic bloc larger than the European Union, beginning to forge an innovation environment, shaped by internal priorities, not external aid. This isn't about catching up. It's about building different. Naturally, responses vary. Some see a major opportunity. A stable, harmonized digital market is beneficial for international commerce. It means transparent regulations, predictable infrastructure, and scalable systems. These actors are engaging earnestly, seeking long-term alliances. They recognize this is no longer just an emerging market. It's a pivotal digital frontier. Others, however, are more wary. A continent that governs its own digital identity, data, and cybersecurity is less dependent, less easily influenced, less open to external pressure. A unified structure compresses the negotiation space. It alters the balance. Some worry that this new sovereignty will make their own digital interests harder to advance. But the most telling reaction is the quiet recalibration. Global bodies are gradually beginning to frame the continent as an equal digital participant, not merely a consumer of technology. The narrative is shifting unmistakably. The world is adjusting. Some embrace it, some resist it, but all are noticing. And that leads us to the final inevitable question. If the current direction holds, what will this digital landscape truly resemble when 2030 arrives? Project the current momentum forward, and the continent in 2030 looks fundamentally different from common perception. It appears more structured, more synchronized, and more internally linked than in any recent era. Not flawless, not uniform, but coherent. And that coherence changes everything. Start with fundamentals, a unified digital identity across a significant portion of the continent makes movement simpler, verification faster, and services less tied to location. We're describing a scenario where someone from Accra can authenticate themselves in Kigali as easily as in their hometown. This is the quiet infrastructure that transforms daily existence. The digital economy transforms too. By 2030, a startup here won't ponder, how do we launch in another country? They'll strategize. Which segment of the continental user base do we scale to first? The psychological leap is enormous. When builders feel the continent opening up, their visions expand. You stop designing for a single metro area. You design for a billion-person network. Payments will feel different progressively, year by year. More gateways will interconnect, more currencies will integrate, and more digital tools will work across borders seamlessly. A craftsperson in one capital will sell to buyers in another without treating it as a complex export operation. Governments will also operate differently. Policy won't be as siloed. If one nation devises an effective AI governance model, it can become a template for others. Instead of dozens of parallel experiments, you cultivate a shared repository of proven systems. Each country enhancing what neighbors have already built. Alignment turns local progress into continental momentum. The pipeline for skills and education will adapt. Digital literacy will be taught not just for local employment, but for continent-wide opportunity. A young developer learning cloud architecture or data science will be entering a job market stretching across multiple capitals and time zones. Pathways widen because systems communicate. Perhaps the most powerful change by 2030 will be confidence. A region that once viewed itself through a lens of dependency will start acting as an architect of its own digital destiny. That internal cultural shift may be the most transformative outcome of all. But if the continent becomes this integrated and digitally capable one, grand question remains. What occurs on the global stage when it finally activates its single digital market and begins to negotiate as one unified digital entity? If the trajectory holds, the activation moment won't feel like a sudden explosion. It will feel like a quiet pivot, the kind people only fully appreciate in hindsight. There won't be a single press conference. Instead, the international community will gradually realize the ground has moved. The continent will no longer engage as dozens of fragmented digital markets, but as a coordinated force with momentum, architecture, and leverage. That leverage is crucial For decades, global dealings in trade, tech, data, or investment were shaped by fragmentation. Corporations could enter one market and use that to sway another. Governments could strike one-off deals. Digital standards varied, wildly creating gaps that often ceded control. A single market rewrites that script immediately. Consider the practical implications. A multinational tech firm trying to shape data policy in one country will now encounter a continent-wide framework. A foreign telecom provider can't easily play nations against each other for licenses if the systems are aligned. A fintech giant seeking dominance must integrate with a continental payments network, not just cherry. Pick a couple of markets. The advantage tilts, quietly but decisively. Investors will sense the difference. Entering these markets once meant navigating a labyrinth of disparate rules and infrastructures. A unified digital space makes investment more predictable, less risky, and vastly more scalable. Instead of backing a business confined to one city, an investor can fund a venture built for an entire interconnected region from day one. The math of opportunity changes. This isn't about isolation or creating walls. It's about integration on its own terms. It's about constructing a digital commons where everyday life becomes smoother, where talent can flow to opportunity, where a small business can dream as big as its continent, and where the world engages, not with fragmented pieces, but with a cohesive, innovative, and self-determined partner. The quiet build is underway. The next decade will reveal its full shape. If you found this exploration compelling, please hit the like button. It supports the channel immensely. That connects the dots on our changing world. Make sure you're subscribed to Winds of Thought. Thanks for watching.